This week, I'm here to talk about the concept of change, or what is called parinama in the Yoga Sutras, and in particular, how our relationship to change, according to yoga, causes us suffering in this lifetime. So let's start here. If you just look around you for a moment, look at the plants perhaps, look at your own body, look outside, look at the weather, look at the clouds, look at the sun, well, not for too long. What is the one thing that we can say is constant in everything around us, everything that we perceive, and everything in our body? Change. The one thing that is constant is that nothing stays the same, not for a moment. Now, certain objects may appear and give the impression of being stable and not subject to change. But even if that change is unfolding over a chronological time span, which is far longer than to make it apparent and obvious that change is taking place, change is still taking place. An obvious example is perhaps the sun. We take the sun to be a permanent fixture in the solar system, but of course, at some point, one day, the sun will extinguish, it will run out of energy. Now, we will probably not be here to see that. But that is an example of change that is going on that maybe might not be apparent to us right now, but absolutely is the case if we look into it deeply. And at a level perhaps more personal to us and nearer to ourselves, we can also look at the people around us. We can look at the relationships that we have. We can look at the jobs or the work that we do, or the things that we engage with. And again, if we reflect deeply, and perhaps at some point not even that deeply because it becomes so obvious, we can see that change is inherent within everything. As soon as we get a relationship to a place that we feel is good, as we may say, or pleasant, certain external factors start to act, or internal factors start to act on that relationship, and things start to slide again in a different, unanticipated direction. One day we wake up and we feel pleasant and happy. The next day we wake up and we maybe feel sad and down, or lonely, or frustrated, or angry. Our minds are constantly changing. Our bodies are constantly changing. They're growing for a certain part of our lives. They're decaying for the rest of our lives. And so we can see that the more we look into the material world around us and the material world that we are a part of, that change is an inherent constant in everything that we see and everything that we do. Now, the question becomes, why is this important, and why does yoga spend quite a number of sutras actually talking about the nature of change? Well, actually, as with all things yoga, it's about relationship. And in this instance, it's about the relationship that we have to change. And what the Yoga Sutras tell us is that one of the causes of suffering is the fact that we are resistant of change. We are resistant to change. And as soon as something appears in our lives as an object, as a relationship, as a feeling, as a thought, and it feels comfortable to us, we start to develop this feeling of raga, this craving, or this desire for it to perpetuate, perhaps in perpetuity, we might say, on an ongoing basis. And similarly, when things arise in our lives that perhaps cause us pain and suffering, we feel that we want to push them away. Now, the interesting thing about this dual-sided coin, that last part is called dvesha, or aversion, is that when it's something that we crave, because we feel that it is something that can continue to bring us pleasure, we try to hold on to it, regardless of the fact that at some point that thing or that relationship will change and will melt away at some point in some way. And so we kind of mistake that relationship or that thing to have some kind of permanence. But also at the same time, when something causes us pain or suffering, we also make the error that pain or suffering with that thing in our lives is also going to continue, perhaps on a felt permanent basis. And the reality of both sides of the coin is that everything pleasurable that may pass through our lives is impermanent and subject to change. But also at the same time, everything that causes us suffering is also subject to those same laws of parinama, of change. So on one hand, that may cause us to feel some way in terms of suffering or pain, the fact that we're going to lose things that we have attached to, that we feel bring us pleasure. But on the other hand, it perhaps is kind of refreshing to know that whatever difficult circumstances we find ourselves in one day to the next, or whatever mental state we find ourselves in one day to the next, that mental framework, that perspective, that mood, that feeling, that emotion also has the capacity to change, either in the short, the medium, or the long term. So really, one of the lessons that's coming from the Yoga Sutras in relationship to change is for us to be able to see if we are able to flow with much less resistance to the things that change in our lives. And in order to do this, well, there are many ways that we can practice getting to this point, but the one point that I would like to mention today is this, which is that ultimately, if we can truly admit to ourselves the fundamental reality of change, the fundamental reality that anyone we love at some point is going to move away, whether that be because our relationship comes to an end, whether that be because one of us dies, passes away, whether that be because one of us moves to a different country, that relationship is going to change. Similarly, with our children, we may have deep attachment to them when they're very young, and as a result of that, we are resistant to them growing up. We are resistant to letting them fly the nest, we might say. And all of these things are based on the fact that we have attached ourselves to an idea or a way of being or a way of feeling that we somehow want to hold and to crystallize and to solidify. But the natural world, time and time again, will beat us down if resistance is our primary method or mode of interacting with the change in our lives. So fundamentally, what yoga is asking us to consider, to explore, and to move towards is the ability to hold everything lightly. Yes, love. Yes, engage. Yes, be present. Experience the beauty and the fullness of life and all of its ups and downs, all the pleasure and pain that is only available to us because of this miracle of life which we are experiencing in this moment. But at the same time, make no mistake, let us be radically honest with ourselves. That's what yoga tells us to do, about the reality of things as they are. So rather than sugarcoating or turning away or averting to the reality of things, let us love, but also at the same time realize the transient nature of that form of love in that moment. Let us have relationships, but let us also at the same time be aware of their transient nature. That awareness can actually bring about a profound presence and a profound appreciation of that particular moment in a far more intense way than if our mind somehow creates a backdoor route to thinking that all of the things in our lives at this particular moment of time are meant to be permanent. And of course, as I said, on the other side of the coin is the simple fact that no matter what we suffer today, there is always an opportunity for that to shift, for that to change, for the clouds to part, for the sun to shine once again in our lives. And that is why this famous saying, which is often repeated, this too shall pass. The good shall pass, the bad, as we may label it, shall pass. But that there is a place beyond the passing transience that is unchanging. That's something for another time. That is something that yoga continues to point us towards, this consciousness or this awareness within us that is the experiencer, the witness, the watcher of all of these changes. But although it is the experiencer of all of these things, it remains unaffected. It remains still and stable and peaceful. And so to sum up, change, parinama, and our relationship to that change can cause us suffering if we are only attached into an idea that things should not change unless we want them to. If we can let go a little bit, apply this detachment, this vairagya to all of the areas of our lives, we can sit a little bit deeper, move towards this presence or this consciousness which is unchanging. And there we can start to find a stability and a peace which is far more sustainable and lasting than anything that arises and dances on the surface of our lives as circumstance or something in the material plane. So as always, thanks for joining. I hope you found this video useful, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Namaste.